But before we get too far away from it, I want to talk about the microcosm that is the TVs. So we seem to be moving backwards instead of forwards. And sometimes I get a bit frustrated because I witness as somewhat of a neutral observer how politics often devolves into infighting amongst groups of people who one would consider friends for the most part with regard to their political ambitions or their political ideologies. But because of mild disagreement, they decide to fight amongst themselves and simultaneous to that, ignore the real enemy. And if you've noted over the last week any frustration in me regarding the special session, it is that. I do not tote the water, as my pa used to say, for Governor Bill Lee. But I can understand how listeners over the last week have felt like I am doing that. Only inasmuch as I do not see the boogeyman that other organizations and other groups and other individuals see in terms of this special session. I understand the argument that there's no need for it. Completely. That argument is predicated on the idea that the entire purpose of a special session is of an emergency nature, something that must not and cannot wait until the next convening of the General Assembly in regular session. And if there was an identifiable pressing need in the aftermath of the Covenant School shooting that did not get addressed at the end of the regular session this past session earlier in the year, then that would make sense, and I think it would make sense for everyone. If there was an obvious something, square peg into a square hole, then I don't think that there would be this consternation about the special session to the degree that there is. That's perfectly legitimate. I understand that. I understand that one could argue that it's a waste of money, and all of this could get accomplished coming in January. At the same time, I do not see, nor do I understand the argument that Governor Bill Lee and Jack Johnson, and I've heard this argument repeatedly, and because I don't belong to Club Republican and I don't belong to Club Conservative, I don't belong to any of your clubs. I don't belong to any club that would have me as a member. I am Matt Murphy individual and will remain Matt Murphy individual till the day I die. So sometimes I'm going to say stuff that pisses you off, especially if you belong to those clubs, because I'm not going to hold back when I see wrongdoing. And I see a lot of conservatives in the state of Tennessee going after the wrong people. In the state of Tennessee, we are not currently, and here's what I mean by that, okay? In the state of Tennessee, we're not losing the gun battle. We're not. And under the leadership of Bill Lee, tell me how the Second Amendment has not been strengthened. It's my understanding that it has been. Some of you might disagree with that. But when I bring that up to people who are knowledgeable about all of these things, the only thing that they can tell me is that, well, he didn't go far enough. Specifically with the elimination of the need to carry a concealed carry permit, and some would call that constitutional carry, and others are very quick to point out that it is not actually constitutional carry. And I understand their point, but it got better. So if it's getting better under conservative leadership in the state of Tennessee, why are we pointing fingers at Governor Bill Lee with regard to this special session? We're not losing the battle regarding Second Amendment issues in Tennessee, but we are most certainly losing it in the United States of America. And the source of my frustration over the last week, and we're all a big family, and I hope you consider yourself as such. I certainly do. And so I feel the need to identify this, address it, and in some way apologize. I don't want to yell at you about these things that I see that are frustrating me, but I do believe that it needs to be addressed. That when you have conservative or so-called conservative organizations deciding that instead of firmly planting their flag on the hill of going after Democrats and going after liberals and going after others who lie in the weeds attempting to take advantage of tragedies and evil situations such as Covenant, instead of doing that, we are scoring political points or we're settling political scores by going after fellow conservatives in the state of Tennessee over what is perceived as not quite the right position on the Second Amendment. Does this make sense to anybody? Anybody within the sound of my voice? Are you hearing me? I pray God you are, because if you don't understand what I'm saying, I promise you in 15 years, we're not going to be in a good situation when it comes to the Second Amendment. Because we're not fighting back against the right people. We're fighting amongst ourselves, which makes us weaker, those of us who believe in the Constitution, and makes those who don't, who want to change it, who consider it a living, breathing document, those people get stronger because we're eating our own. And yes, I'm talking to Gary Humble and other organizations like his. I use him as an example, and I probably shouldn't. People think I hate the guy. I don't know Gary Humble. I'm sure he's a nice enough guy. There can be great good that comes. You know, we don't decide whether to call the special session. The governor does. So if you want to argue that this shouldn't be happening to begin with, then I'm right there. That's fine. That is a valid argument. It's a valid point that you're making. But that's not up to me or you. And if you want to ding or criticize the governor for making the call at all, then I understand that completely. What I don't understand are organizations that are lying to their readers or lying to those that listen to them about what the governor has done since the call or what he has done since he floated the idea of an order of protection. Friends, why not take the victory? Governor Bill Lee, let's be real clear. In April, Governor Bill Lee floated the idea of an order of protection law. And immediately the state of Tennessee said, no, sir. We do not believe that red flag laws work. They don't. We believe that a red flag law by any other name is still a red flag law. It was. We do not believe in curtailing the rights of individuals singularly with regard to guns without the necessity to curtail the rest of their rights. And everything that anyone within the process tells me is that the governor heard that message, which is why he's not presented a bill on red flag laws and won't. Yet still, when I'm reading news organizations in this state, I see the governor's red flag law session. You're either ignorant of what's been going on around you or you're doing that intentionally to up your readership. And if that's the reason you're doing it, then you're just as bad as the liberal media. If you're willing to be dishonest in order to gain a political advantage over fellow conservatives, then how are you different than the mainstream media? I ask you. By the way, without naming names, because I don't want to do that. I don't want to be guilty of what I'm criticizing in the opening monologue today. I'm not going to turn friends into enemies over what I perceive as something that is devaluing the position that we all hold and giving an advantage to liberals who are tenacious, who will never stop. They will lie in the weeds and they will wait until we are weak. Weak primarily because we have eaten our own, and then they will take advantage. And yeah, I'm talking to everybody that uses the term uniparty. I am. I'm talking to everyone that decides that their version of conservatism is pure And anyone that disagrees with any aspect of their version of conservatism, they are lesser than. Whether you know it or not, you're hurting the cause of liberty and freedom and constitutional republic. I believe that. And so I have to call it out. And I do. So that's why I've been grumpy this week. Now, if something comes up, on individual issues, I will tell you what I feel about it. I'll get what you think about it. We'll talk about it. That's the way that the public square works. That's the way that the electronic public square that is represented by talk radio works. That's the way that representative government works. But we have a lot of players in this game in the state of Tennessee that are deciding on how they feel about certain aspects of what's going on based on what advantage it presents for them. That is selfish, and it is not in the best interest of the people of this state. And as God is my witness, I'm never going to do that. I wouldn't do it to you. It's a disservice to you.